Hi, this is Daniel with Unrivaled Investing. Today we are once again talking about GrowGeneration. This is actually my second video about GRWG, so I will post a link below in the description of this video for you to watch the first video. I feel like you should watch the first video because that's a dive into the fundamentals of the business before diving into this subject matter. And also, if you're interested in companies that can go up hundreds or have gone up hundreds or even thousands of a percent, hit that subscribe button. And if you're interested in following my personal financial journey, what I'm buying and selling each month, go to unrivaledinvesting.com, click that journey button. And also, if you have any questions or comments, please leave it in the discussion section below. Thanks. So why the second video? The stock was down about 5% today following a short report that came out about GrowGeneration. First, what is a short report? A short report's when usually it's a hedge fund that loads up on a big short position on a company where they're betting, and they've done a lot of research on the company, that they're betting that it'll go down. So they're shorting the stock, and you can research what it means to short, betting that the stock will fall dramatically from current levels. And they put out all this, they do this research, and then they put out a research piece that shows point by point why this company is destined to drop lower. And so at this point, like, oh my God, there's a short report on GrowGenerations. What are you supposed to do? And my next steps were, one is you read it, take your time, and then think about it. Like, are their points valid? Go through each point. It's worth understanding the opposite perspective whenever you own something. Don't get biased just because you own something. That's a terrible way to go through life. You always want to see things from someone else's perspective. So after I read it and thought about it, I mentally thanked them for posting it. I'm glad to have the opportunity to understand more about the company. And you should definitely go read it. Like if you own stock in GrowGeneration, like I personally do, you should always understand, like, what's the downside risk to this. And so I posted the link here so that way you could read the short report. And you always want to know the truth about a company. So if someone's willing to do a lot of work to dig up, hey, these are some aspects to the company that are sort of shady, or this is some real big risks, I want to know about it up front. That said, the short report really didn't change that much for me. And you're like, well, a hedge fund just put on, or a fund just put on this big, bet against the company, put out this report that shows all this stuff. Why would that not change much? So let's dive a little in. So why I haven't done anything yet regarding the GrowGeneration position that I have. First, it's a tracker position for me. My total downside risk is really small. I've capped this position to well under 1% of my portfolio. So this comes to a portfolio management conversation first of like, look, if some of the things that they call out play out, my downside isn't that bad. Like I'm still going to sleep well at night. Whereas at the same time, if the company executes and does really well, like this little position will do fine. And, I might get a little nice little bump to my portfolio, and I can watch them as they execute, as the company delivers over time. This approach to portfolio management fits my temperament. I like scaling into positions as I learn more about the company and watch them grow. If they don't deliver, then I'm glad it's a small position to start. What else? The second thing is, the reason why it really hasn't changed much for me is, honestly, I had low expectations. As I mentioned in the last video, this was my first pot stock. This was virgin territory for me. There's a lot of characters associated with the pot industry. And given that association where it has this history of being outlawed, I honestly just had super low expectations of the characters that you're going to be dealing with in this industry. Now, do you have to deal with them? No. So what, and also, the second point is you should be expecting, like that's my first instinct with the pot industry. It's like, I'm not so sure about it because you're attracting these types of folks that may be preying on pump and dump schemes. But the reality is what the existing GrowGeneration management has articulated, like, seems coherent to me. seems logical. They're talking about several things that, like, one, their expansion strategy is to buy these one-offs that are at low multiples to EBITDA. Like with my private equity experience, I can tell you, buying at 2 to 3 times EBITDA, that's a winning strategy. If you can sustainably do that, roll that up on a national way, absolutely. Their focus on payback period or return on investment, yeah, that's what smart operators do. Their focus on expanding private label from 2% to 10% sounds aggressive, but that's what a retailer does. I mean, that's they're everything that they're articulating on the call doesn't smack me with incompetence or greed or stupidity. It strikes me as like, yeah, they're trying to operate this to the best of their ability, targeting their commercial customers and having a dedicated sales force to do this, focusing on omni-channel, so that way you can get their products no matter where you are, whether or not it's online or in store. So management definitely is saying a lot of smart things. What else? The short report didn't really have a smoking gun when you read through it. It's really a warning on the character of management and some of their past dealings, which does create higher than average potential for fraud or mistreatment of shareholders. So, like, as an investor, you should be aware of that. Like, you should read the report if you're an investor and think about these things. The short report also had some comments on the valuation that honestly I thought were kind of meh, where they're saying, look, this valuation is really rich. There's not a lot of companies that can grow at their rate, 100% plus. And when you have a company that's growing that quickly, you can easily fill into that valuation. I mean, they're mid-single digits forward sales, and you're looking at a lot of companies that trade a lot more than that at a lot lower growth rate. So I thought the valuation comments were off, but the warnings on the character management, on the character of management, yeah, I'm glad they did that. I learned from reading the report. It made me more cautious. So when I'm reading this, I'm like, okay, it's unlikely this ever becomes a big position in my portfolio. But is it something I like having exposure to? Is it something I like learning the story? Do I think I'll still get an adequate return over time, or even very satisfactory potentially? Yeah. So it hasn't really changed my investment thesis. That they're tapping into this much bigger market and they're going to, operate as logically and coherently as they can. But it does, my ears are perked up that there might be management grab in the future, or there might be misdealings, or there's potential for fraud. Those are all red flags, absolutely. And because of that, from a portfolio management perspective, I will always make sure that I can't lose a lot in it. So what do I do from here? So first, I'm going to judge GrowGeneration based on their results. They just raised, in the last couple of months, nearly $50 million from investors. That definitely gives them real firepower to accelerate their growth. If management is right, and I don't think they're lying about the EBITDA multiples on, the stores that they can buy. Buying at 2 times $50 million, that's $25 million in EBITDA that they could potentially get in the coming years, whereas they're currently penciling out a similar level next year. So that's real in my mind, no matter what short report you're talking about. Like that strikes me as like, no, you can't make up $50 million that just came in. And there is a possibility that they develop an unrivaled value proposition. So I am cognizant of the upside, which is, they develop a brand, they get scale, and with scale comes pricing power. So, my view is, as a shareholder from here, I'm going to judge GrowGeneration and management based on the results. They've put out guidance for these levels. If they crush 2020 or 2021 guidance, like, they're delivering. Yeah, I mean, this is let's judge them by their results. So what's the possible range of outcomes from here? And the reality is, it's super wide. It's about as wide as it gets. On the one side, on the upside, they're able to deliver and maybe they continue to execute and they're growing at 50% a year, in which case you have a home run of an investment. Or you wake up and the stock is halted one morning and you're wondering, WTF? And you find out there's fraud going on, and that's a little 2-bit accountant that they're using was purposefully used to cover up problems. Is that possible? Yeah, it's definitely possible. You know, you have to consider the full range of possibilities whenever you invest in any company. That said, management does own literally tens of millions of dollars in the stock. So it would seem like it should lower the odds of there being mass fraud because they have skin in the game. Now, you could argue, and keep in mind, the short report was not making this argument that the numbers are fraudulent right now. That's not what the short report was saying. It's just saying these people have shady backgrounds. And so, you know, looking at that, I'm thinking, okay, so the risk that it drops dramatically from here is that if we can't trust the financials as it currently is, which is possible, I'm not going to say that's a zero event. And on the upside, it's growing like crazy. So my view is I've got a small position, well under 1%. I'm going to keep tracking the story. It's an interesting story. Honestly, I like exposure to a fast-growing industry. I like the exposure of a potential national roll-up. And I like that management has skin in the game. So that, honestly, if I wake up and the stock's halted and, you know, it's down 70%, I know that management has lost a lot more than me. So my view is position accordingly. You know, if you're interested in what I'm buying or selling in any given month, go to unrivaledinvesting.com, click that journey button so you can see, like, what am I finding interesting? This is just one company that I was buying earlier this week. And I take a long-term view where I'm trying to find the companies that I think can grow, you know, hundreds or potentially even thousands of percent over time. And thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, hit that subscribe button.